Rushmore Show, where it's all about your top four and nothing more. Andy, we're a little late. I'm here. It's my fault. Blame my football playing son's coach and all that stuff. Yeah, they got their butts whooped this weekend, and it was to like a rival team, and the coach wanted a team meeting. So we were a little behind. I apologize, but man, it is the end of nostalgia. It's the end of our series, and got a fantastic guest. Got some friends that are already starting to pop in. Who we got in the comments there?
Barry's here. Barry,
Mr. Mayonnaise Sandwich himself. Vanilla wafers and mayonnaise, guys. If you love vanilla wafers and mayonnaise, Barry's your guy. So
let me just comment on that real quick. I've already said it. I mean, obviously we have the video out there that it's not good. But I'm supposed to make it a sandwich, right? That's what I've been told since. And also I had a very cheap brand of mayonnaise. Now we know in this world, all mayonnaise is not created equally. And now in my house, I'm willing to give it possibly a 2.0, a second try. I have Duke's mayonnaise, which is arguably the best mayonnaise that's out there. So
arguably
maybe we'll try that again. And we'll see.
Next time, I want to be in on it though. I want to be in on it.
When you come for RetroCon, we'll do one.
We'll do a twofer because I need to get in on it. Yes. So Andy approves. Hey, well, look, we have a great show today. It's kind of a unique show in the event that it's on a Monday. If you guys been around with us long enough, you know that Mondays is usually our pre-record submission day for the first 3 years. And so being out here on a Monday and kind of going live, it feels fun. I like it. But again, you kind of get in those modes of doing things one way and now you're out. Today we have a fun topic though, Andy. We're finishing up. Yeah, let's go, Bill Keys. Where you at, bud? We're starting we're ending, the nostalgia. And what's more nostalgic childhood than superheroes? We've talked about superheroes before, but we never actually talked about comic books, right? And we got some comic guys that we're friends with, we kind of follow. And we have a guest today that is an aficionado, man. He knows the comic book world for the last several years. He's on tons of podcasting, and he joins some comic shows, quite a few of them. So we're going to be outnumbered with the knowledge on this side, Andy. We got some folks in the house. Fat Boy, welcome. It's good to see you. And so, Andy, I think you are a little over your head in this one, right?
Yeah. So rewind back to January, February. At the time, I don't want to say least prepared, but the least knowledgeable that I've ever been of a topic that we've ever done. We did RPGs, right? We did
role-playing games. Yeah.
Very obvious. I've talked about it. If you've kind of been around long enough, you know that RPGs are just not my deal. But I'm knowledgeable enough about video games that I made it work. Tonight is scary. Tonight's scary because, and I'm going to talk about it plenty, I'm sure, throughout the night. And I was talking to our guest before we went live, and I've said it before too. When I went to a comic book shop as a kid, there was one in Terrytown where I grew up, and I was going there to get action figures. Like that's what I want. They had those, or I was getting like Pokemon cards and different things like that at the time. Like I was getting the cards. I wasn't going to the books. However, I do remember appreciating the artwork, and it was like, man, this is so cool, but I don't want to read a book. And that was where it ended for me. And I just never got into them. But however,
I'll talk a little bit more about this. And I know our guest, right? And kind of gave it away there. But he mentioned in our pre-talk a reason that we were going one direction or the other was because of certain writer or a certain story arc. And I know a little bit of that. Not as much as I know that he knows. And so I'm excited for that part. For me, I'm going a completely different route, and I'll explain that when it comes to my criteria. But I think we should just get this thing going. We're already a little behind, and get to the show, man. Get to dolls. Kiss dolls. Well, yeah, sure. I
Well,
guess.
I was
Kiss the-
getting my Kiss
Or
action
kiss
figures.
dolls.
I was getting the Kiss action figures at the comic book shops, believe it or not. I definitely did buy them. I've got them in my office.
Let's get our guest out here. We got 6 in the house. Say hello in the chat, but we're ready to get our top 4 or our Rushmore of comic books. Let's get it. All right, Andy. So comic books, man. I'm just going to tell you right now, I love comic books. I don't have as many as I wish I could, and I've kind of gotten out of the hobby. But one of my favorite things to do is watch other people do the hobby I wish I had, maybe with the finances I wish I had or the time I wish I had. So a lot of times I kind of venture into these card communities, these comic book places, these video game places, a lot of the things we talk about, and I have stumbled upon several few. And one of my favorites is Spine Ticks. They go Saturday night, and a part of Spine Ticks is in Spine Ticks is actually that little crease or whatever at the spine of the comic book. I felt watching these guys kind of just discuss. We were going to have another guest on. He subbed in. He tag team partner, tag team back again, and he tagged in our friend Dan Della Torre, and he's going to come on and tell us about some comics all the way from California. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Kirk, Andy, thanks for having me on. This is going to be a fun discussion. This could be a comics 101, if you will.
Yes.
And thank you for the credit you guys gave me. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the smartest person regarding comics. The only reason I know so much, I'm old. I've been collecting for a long, long here,
let's just get
this room right now. I just want you to know you are the smartest person for comics in this room.
Okay.
Yeah, at least in this room, yeah. So Dan, tell us a little bit about your collection, your what got you into doing this, and kind of like where can people find you?
Why I started collecting comics was I grew up kind of poor. You know, my parents, we worked hard. We just did. It was difficult back in the 70s. And I love my parents because they'd worked so hard, but the education wasn't really focused in on. And I didn't have much to read back in those days, but comic books grabbed my attention. And the reason why is they were 25 cents. They were colorful. And when I was reading them, they grabbed my interest. And I started with one, then another. And I still have most of those from back those days in these boxes here. This collection behind me is probably from the last 10 years or so when I stopped and restarted again. But comics were a disposable medium. You're supposed to buy them, throw them away, like any magazine, basically, because that's basically what they are. I found myself not throwing them away. I love looking at the artwork. I've read the story over and over and over again. I was always entertained. It's sort of like a song you like to listen to over and over again. You're not going to throw the song away once you've heard it once. Comics were that way for me. And it became a thing. And when I was a kid, growing up, it wasn't cool to be a nerd. If you were a nerd, you were outed. You know, you're like, oh, you like Star Trek or Lost in Space or comic book, come on, you know. And it was such a thing to be outed and picked on as a nerd. Even the parents would pick on you. They'd laugh along with you. Fast forward to today, it's almost cool to be a nerd. It's sort of like you had shows like The Big Bang Theory. Yeah, The Big Bang Theory was a great show. I mean, the stars were all nerds, and they profiled their struggles, and there's still that stigma today. But I learned a hard lesson about 12 years ago. I had some very, very expensive books. I had first Spider-Man, which is Amazing Fantasy 15, and not one but two Tales of Suspense 39s. That's the first Iron Man. And I was sort of shamed and pressured into selling them, and it was really a stupid thing to do, both financially, and I didn't listen to myself. Always listen to yourself. If you believe in something, don't let someone tell you differently. Well, I sold them, and it didn't take long to realize what a stupid thing that was, because now they're unbelievably expensive. I can't grab them anymore. The Amazing Fantasy 15 that I had today in that condition, $40,000 to $50,000. So again, yeah, that was, and I don't associate with those people anymore that shame me, because if you don't want to be if someone wants to tell you to be someone else, leave that person alone. Get that person out of your life, because I learned a hard lesson. This is who I am. I embrace this. I don't care who likes it. I don't care who, and I still get shamed to this day.
You came here for comic books, and we're getting life lessons. I love it.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. So that is holy moly. That's impressive. But we got a couple people hopping in here. Kenneth Bird is here. I said hey to Zach's Sporting Cards and Collectibles, and then we got Comic Cap Collectibles in the house.
Man. Welcome to the show, everybody. Comic Cap Collectibles. Welcome to the show. This is for you. So look, whenever we have someone new come to the chat or hang around, we just want to tell them welcome to the Summit Squad. Summit Squad is just our fun way of talking about climbing this mountain together. And we've got a great show today. So Dan, thanks for sharing that. I'll kind of go into my bits in a little bit and kind of about my history of collecting, and I've never had a $50,000 book, but I've always dreamt that everything that I collected would become that retirement, and honestly, I've realized I jump into a couple different shows, and people are always talking about, oh, that's just a common card, or that's just a what. Like I watch them, and I kind of get cringed now, because I realized that it wasn't always just about the expensive or the investment. It was about the journey. It was about the ride. It was about just, this is something I love, and I appreciate that. I would never let anybody shame me to sell. My wife tries to get me to sell, and that doesn't happen. So if that don't work, then we're good.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. So Dan, before we get started, guys, y'all hear a little feedback?
I hear feedback. I do. Very sensitive.
Is that me?
It must be you. He's got.
Is that the low whine that we hear? I'm hearing it in my headphones.
Whenever I talk, I hear it repeated. You guys chat for a second, see if I can't fix it.
All right.
I'm gonna mute you and see. No, it must be on Kirk's end, because now I don't hear it. I don't hear double me.
Okay.
Is it you, Kirk?
It's got to be on me. So I'm gonna change.
That's interesting. All right. Well, hey, this is gonna be a fun night. I know who just said it? I just saw one that came through here. I think it was Barry. Oh yeah. He said, "Take notes, fellas. This is like you said, Dan. This is gonna be one-on-one tonight. Very excited for that." And we're gonna go ahead and get into our top fours. We're gonna start with that. So, Dan,
before we begin, I want to throw one thing up before I forget this.
Yeah.
And I should have thrown it in my intro. As a child, one of the things that really gravitated me towards the comic, especially the Marvel comics, there were better stories than DC. It's a long story as to why. But there was always, when I was growing up, good guys versus bad guys. And I always rooted for the good guy. I never rooted for the bad guy whatsoever.
Yeah, you mentioned
that. And I
that.
love that, that appeal to, good overcoming evil, and that resonated in a big way from the 60s, 70s, and 80s with Marvel. And that still resonates with me today. Today, everything's a little dicey, everything's a little mixed up, and it's in some venues, there are no good guys, they're all bad guys, and it's really hard to root for the lesser of two evils. But again, that was one of the loves that gravitated me towards comics, and it still grabs me to this day.
Nice.
Yeah. I totally agree. You mentioned that to me when we had the phone call. Do I sound better now?
So much better.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get started with our show. And well, one of the things that we didn't get to is, and we'll get to it at the end, Dan, you're going to share kind of some places that you can be found, like where people can find you on some of the shows. We'll give you an opportunity at the end. So let's just jump into this. And Dan, you're going to go first.
All right.
So, first things first, we asked, like, what's your criteria? So a criteria for us is just, we really don't have a better word. We wish we kind of had a better word. Criteria is kind of, but like what we've felt is that if, you're in California, right? And so you probably you were just mentioning previous to this that you were an Oakland A's fan. Being an Oakland A's fan, they've had several good teams, the Canseco years. They've had the Eric Gagne or the Eric what's his name? Gosh, I lost the Jason Giambi years, those years like the Jason and Jeremy and all those guys. And anyways, if I was to ask you who your favorite baseball players are or your top 4, it might not necessarily come with the same 4 that someone would be that is from New York or Miami or wherever. And so what we've realized is that it means a lot to do with criteria. So age, gender, time you were raised, and kind of like your story you were just sharing with the 25-cent books means a lot why something might be more valuable to you or more nostalgic or more important than another one. So what were you thinking when you were kind of like putting your list together as parameters, and then you'll go with your first one, which we call Rosie?
Well, when you guys asked me what my top 4 was, to an old collector like me, that's a very loaded question because I can go in several different directions. And also, I'm much older than the average comic collector. And because I'm older, I look at the world differently than everyone else does that's younger than I do. And you guys are what, 10, 15, 30 years younger than I am. You see the world differently than I do, and people in their teens are they see even a different perspective. So it's all relative. But regarding finding what I wanted, I just came up with sentimental books that meant something to me. And I'll start with this first one here. It was this is probably the least expensive by far of the books I'm going to show here. And anyone can get this, but I bought it because this kind of shows why I loved comics in the first place. You can get this for $1 if you find it in any dollar bin. Well, not any dollar bin, but it's not a very expensive book. And it's What If, number 71. And this came out, I believe, in 95. This is one of the last books I read in the mid to late 90s when I stopped collecting because the stories were just they weren't that great. They weren't the same as the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby stories of the day. Now, again, you can find this very reasonable, and it says, what if the gamma bomb spawned 1,000 Hulks? Now, you can see a bunch of Hulks on the cover here. I'll give the synopsis without telling you the whole story because it's a great read. That story takes place in World War II, and during the time when there was conflict, and the U.S. dropped a couple of bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Instead of dropping conventional nuclear weapons, this story refers to the scientists of the day coming up with gamma weapons, which was way more advanced. The scientists also warned the American government in this story that there was a lot of side effects. They had no idea what would happen. And it was a much more powerful bomb. Well, because of the heat of battle and what was going on at the time, the U.S. decided to do that using these gamma weapons. And it worked. It destroyed most of Japan, and it was pretty horrific, but something happened that it wasn't expected. And these sort of mutations began to happen. And so Japan, who was just beaten down, and remember, at the time, their honor was a big deal with the Japanese. They realized what they have, these powerful beings, and they recruit them. They basically said, hey, look, you guys want to seek revenge? Let's go, seek revenge for what happened to us, because these people had lost their families and everything and all that. So they do. And within a week, they literally topple the United States. That these beings are too powerful, and even the beings that the superheroes at the time, the invaders or the all winners or whatever it was, that's another long side story. They were not powerful enough to stop this group here. So in the end, Japan wins World War II. It's a fascinating story regarding what they did moving forward and how this all plays out in the end. I won't spoil it because it was, again, one of the best stories I've ever read. Actually, a very controversial story, by the way, too, by today's standards. I'm surprised they were able to publish this. But again, for $1, this is one of my most favorite reads. I've got several of these copies just because I love the issue here. But again, this is what gravitated me as a comic collector. The story was fabulous. And I don't even recognize the writer. He's not known for his, I forgot to get the name of the writer. I've never seen the artwork, but it was just a fabulous read. So that is where I begin here. Something you can all appreciate and something you can all afford.
I love that. I'm a big Hulk fan, so I do enjoy that. I mean, that sounds awesome. I like the whole, now, again, going a little bit off the comics, but the whole what if idea, like this almost like butterfly effect, like what happens if one little thing changes and how does that affect everything? I think that it's so cool. And that's what's cool with writing, which, I remember and I don't want to spoil this in case somebody brings it up. And if you do bring it up, you don't have to mention about it much. But there's always like the issues where like Superman dies or Batman dies or something like that happens, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, he died!" I'm like, it's a book. You can write whatever you want. You can make whatever happen you want to happen. There doesn't have to be continuity, but this whole what if idea in this series is super cool. That cover looked awesome too, to have that many Hulks. And then somebody, Barry said, 1,000 Hulks, that's a lot of anger management sessions.
I love Barry. He's always in Spine Takes Chat. He's really good guy.
Hey,
what a great guy.
Can I just give a real quick shout out, right?
Yep.
I see my buddy Real Life is in the house. And Real Life, we're going to be on Real Life Perspective show on Friday, which is replacing our show. So since you can't come to our show on Friday, we'll be simulcasting with him. You'll be able to find that here. And we're going to talk Nickelodeon. So thanks for being here, Real Life. He likes to wear the 3D glasses. That's his. Hey, man, I love this thing. Hulk is my – he's on my Rushmore of superheroes. We've mentioned it in episodes past. The Hulk is – I just love the whole anger side, strength, and whatever. And then just how he's a super smart guy and then a super dumb guy. And then he gets even later, he's both, right? And so I love the whole story arc about Hulk. He's always been my favorite in the movies. I've never seen this book, and I'm like writing notes because I'm like, for $1, I'll pick that up for $1. Like RoboCop, I'll buy that for $1. We're always at these conventions. I'm always looking for something to swipe up for my kid, and myself, obviously. But I'm usually honed in on building his collection now. So yeah, I'll have to see if I can find that for sure. That's a great start. So I'm up next. And I'll just go out here and share this. I'm not showing anything expensive. I one of my books has a little bit of value, but nothing big. And I don't have every one of my books. And the reason is kind of my criteria. So my criteria as a kid, if you followed me long enough, I was a bit of a kleptomaniac back in the day. I used to kind of go wherever, and there was 2 comic book, local comic stores that were not far bike riding distance from my house. And much like yourself, I didn't grow up super rich or any standard, but I never needed. I never was in a need for anything. My parents always was very gracious on getting me things, especially if I worked hard at my school and whatnot. But for whatever reason, I just wanted more. And so I would go to these LCSs and I would walk them several times a month, right? And I would take books. I'm being honest. I just take books, and I built my collection. Not just, and I bought some. I didn't take all of them, but I would buy some, and quite a bit actually. And I started building my collection up, and it caught up with me. And it's one of the reasons I'm not really like heartbroken that this happened, because I would say I probably, over the course of my collecting, I probably had about a little more than 1,000, almost 2,000 books. I was trying to figure out what that would look like. So those long boxes that are behind Dan, I had probably 3 or 4 of those, completely filled, backed, and I lost them all in Hurricane Katrina, every one of them, and it wasn't a big. Well, I mean, it was a huge loss because I didn't want to lose my comics, but it wasn't. It was more of like, yeah, it's kind of bittersweet, I didn't deserve to have most of those anyways, and kind of look back, but I wish I did have them because there was some fun stuff in there. And I'm going to talk tonight about some of those books and some of the ones that I've recollected. But every one of mine have a bit of a reason why I would pick that book. And so my first book coming right out the gate is a book from 1982, or actually it's not in 83. I think it was released in like December. Artist or the writer is Chris Claremont. He spent a lot of time in Uncanny X-Men and then moved over to this. This was a kind of a side quest, kind of another way to get Xavier some extra friends down in that school of gifted people. and I'm going with the New Mutants #1, and this book right here. And the reason I picked this, and obviously, again, it's not worth a whole ton, but I bought this sitting in the hospital waiting room, waiting for my son to come, and his name is Cannon, and I bought it because right here, this is Cannonball's first appearance, and so I purchased this for him. I ended up getting #2, which I have right there. So that's 1 and 2 of Cannonball, and I got this book mainly for him, and to kind of start his collection. So just one of those things that kind of like pass that down. I always call him Cannonball. And so this one means a tremendous amount to me. And then I love X-Men and New Mutants. And I love the whole, that whole side of the story. But this is just some extra guys that kind of joined. Some of those guys have joined X-Men and moved in and out. But yeah, I'm going to go with New Mutants #1. So that's this one.
Nice.
I own several of those. That is an underrated book. And you say it's not very expensive. The thing is, you never know with any of these. It depends on what the MCU does, the Marvel Cinematic Universe does. And they're looking for youthful characters because they want to appeal to the youth. That's their audience. So don't sleep on that book. That could turn overnight to be $100, $200 book just because they say they're going to do a movie out of it. And again, the mutant craze is still very much alive and well. Their first appearance is, was it a graphic novel 4 or something? But yeah, that's the first of the series. So yeah, don't underestimate any book that you have in your collection.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I was like, man, I wonder what Cannonball's first appearance was, and then this one came up. So I went and I got it, and then I was like, okay, well, I wonder if I can find another one fairly cheap. I mean, I think I picked them up for like $5 a piece, maybe, and then I was able to get the second one. So yeah, I just wanted to start his collection. So that means a lot to me. That's why I would put it on my Rushmore. So
yeah,
that's a great pick.
So Real Life came in. He says, who's your favorite Hulk actor? Guys, I liked Mark Ruffalo. I thought he was good.
I like Ruffalo.
I like Ruffalo.
I mean, I like Ruffalo for the longevity, and he fit well. But I'm going to be honest, I didn't hate Ed Norton as much as he got.
Listen, as long as you don't pick Eric Bana.
No, I'm not picking. But I don't hate Eric. I don't hate Ed Norton as much as that movie got crumbled.
Well, Eric Bana and Norton, it wasn't their fault. They could have both played good. They actually played decent characters regarding Bruce Banner. The problem with those two movies, they were horrid. The writing was horrid. The storyline was a joke. The director, Ang Lee, who directed the first one, I bet you anything, had never read a comic in his life, and it was a huge disappointment.
One of the things I did like about that, and I think it was Ed Norton's, which was, I can't remember, but they actually filmed it using some of the kind of like techniques that Scott Pilgrim used, with where the movie kind of was trying to look like a comic book, and I thought that was fun. But yeah, the story wasn't great. The story wasn't.
But that was great. Well, I'm old enough to remember Bill Bixby. He was actually a good Bruce Banner. So back in the 70s. So
there you go. I mean, no
Lou Ferrigno. Yeah, I mean
Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah.
I've met him, by the way. I met him. He's here on the West Coast, and he shows up to cons periodically. I'm trying to get his autograph. He's still a big man. He tapped me on the shoulder, and this just gigantic hand just tapping me. He was very polite, but he's lost a lot of his mass. He's not as bulky as he used to be.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to meet him. I used to watch the old TV show with my dad as a kid in the 80s, early 80s, and I remember, the sound effects that they would do when he grew and all, like it was
very good. Yeah. But it worked though. For as cheesy as it was, as low budget as it was, it worked. It still stands up today, I mean, compared to the.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like when you saw that, it was believable because there was no real special effects. There was none of this computer, like that was about the best. It was more theater, right? And so now that we have this, and you look back, our kids go, "Wait, you watched a muscle-bound painted guy? That's crazy."
But here's the thing, though. They depended on their acting ability in the day because that's all they had. And today, Hollywood totally relies on special effects and loud sound. And that's not entertainment as far as I'm concerned.
Especially in the comic world. Especially,
and that's very true in the comic. That's one of the reasons I stopped, because today's comics rely heavily on artwork and not on content. So again, the entertainment today is anywhere near as good as it was back in those days. I'm sorry, I do sound like everyone's grandpa, but that's true.
Get off the lawn!
And yes, get off my damn lawn.
So Andy, you're up, bro.
Okay, well, let's not last too long here. I probably am not crushmoring with anyone tonight. I mean, I don't know. I shared it. I'm the least expert in this thing. I'm the least deserving to talk about this topic. Although there's some ones that I like. Right, I've shared plenty of times. I was buying the toys. I wasn't doing the comic books as much. So I did have to do some research tonight. My criteria was, what are the 4 I can think of? No, I'm just kidding. That wasn't just that. Some of the 4 I do have in my possession, or I have an example or something related to that. And I had to, if I had them, I've read them. So, I mean, it's only been a couple of them. So I don't want to even talk too long about that. But my Rosie, I'm going to start with my Rosie. This is the one I don't have. This is the one I haven't read. And I'm literally only picking it because of a couple things. I'm going to go 1990, August 1990. This one comes out, and it's the debut of my favorite character when it comes to superheroes, of anything. First of all, let's just say it. It's Uncanny X-Men number 266. What's special about that? Remy LeBeau from New Orleans, Gambit, his debut. Now, there's apparently some discrepancy. There was another one that some people think that maybe he was in X-Men Annual number 14, but a lot of people are pretty much saying his first debut is in Uncanny X-Men 266. He was, it was him and Storm. It was a story about him and Storm rescuing her, and literally the only reason I'm putting this one on my list is that my favorite character gets his debut, and then we see everything that's happened with him since then. We talked about him, was it last week, Kirk? How he's kind of criminally underused and rated, I think, to some things, but Gambit is my favorite. He was the guy who made me feel like we had some representation here in the South. Every superhero at that time, or at least a lot of them, were from, a metropolis, a big place, even a New York, whatever. All of it was essentially New York, but we get a guy from New Orleans down here, and he's my most loved character. So I don't have much to say about it other than it was his debut, and that's why he's going to make my list today. Uncanny X-Men.
I bet you Dan has it.
There he is. Yeah,
there
nice.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't undersell this book and that character and all that.
Yeah.
So that's a fabulous pick. That's an absolute fabulous pick. And everyone, the market has gravitated towards this because he's on the cover. And the Annual 14, I think it was it is his first appearance. But no, that's a great. Don't short sell that at all. That's a fabulous.
And I'll say, I did some research on it. On the cover, if you show that up there, it's like not his normal attire that he's wearing. It's different.
No.
It's different in the corner than it is on the cover. Like, it's two different ones. They said there was something about that. And then obviously over time he's kind of evolved, and they all kind of change styles and stuff throughout time.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
He eventually got to the place where it was pretty consistent with what he was wearing. Always
sorry for the this is hard to show a slab because of the reflectivity of it.
We could see it.
So,
great.
yeah. But that's I by the way, shout out to my sister who literally gave me a box of X-Men. She said, Danny, I'm not into comics. You can have them. I said, sure, really? And that was in it.
Man.
So I got it slabbed at this company called EGS.
I need to meet your sister, Danny.
She's a sweetheart.
Look, Paul's in here.
Yeah, but for the win.
He's the coolest X-Men.
Yeah. It was last week, and we had our pop guy on, and he mentioned Dope Smack, actually, and he mentioned that he wasn't the official New Orleans guy, and we were talking Gambit. So yeah, we brought that up last week.
Look,
Gambit is fantastic pick. I actually had this on my Benjamins, Andy. It really, I had it.
Benjamin, wow.
And I'll say this: I never owned that book. That's one of the reasons why. But I did write it down because it's one of those ones I always wanted to pick up because of Gambit. Like when I say wanted to pick up back then, I loved Gambit. I always wanted to try and find that book, and it just never happened. You know?
I love the X-Men. I've talked about it. It's when it came to superheroes to me, like I never really got into the whole Spider-Man thing. Like Batman's cool. Like Superman's cool. All these things are cool. Avengers, all that stuff. Give me X-Men, and that's all I ever really wanted. So I was a big fan of X-Men. Bryce is in the house here too.
So Bryce is got a cool video game channel, guys. You're into video games. He likes doing speed runs and stuff. Go check Bryce out. He's gonna potentially, we work it out. He's gonna be one of our 12 guests coming in January, February for video games. And then Paul, he's already been there. Paul's our guy. He's coming up in a few weeks in sports. And Zach, also the Frugal Gardener, is also coming on our show in a few weeks. So
Luke Cage is one of his favorite superheroes from Georgia. So
yeah. And actually, Zach, it lives where I teach, or lived. That's where he was raised. So all right, man. So Dan, you're up. What's your second pick?
Second pick, and this is for Sith Lordley, who's not here yet. And this is sort of a jab at him. We go back and forth regarding. I claim to be an expert on Marvel and Marvel Silver, Bronze, and Copper Age. Not so much DC, but there's an argument in the community: when did the eras stop and start? You know, because Bronze Age was, in my view, the 25-cent era on to probably the 75-cent era, I suppose. So that's roughly the mid 70s to, I guess, maybe the mid 80s. But there's no arbiter in comics regarding what is what. Because when I was a kid, when I bought what were considered Bronze Age comics at 25-cent comics, those we didn't call them Bronze Age. They were brand new comics off the rack. So this, and a friend, well, not a friend, but a guy, I tried to bring it up on Facebook. I was on a number of Facebook comic groups and all that. He brought this up, and I said, you are totally spot on. He believes this is the last Silver Age book of the era, and it's this one here. This is one of my most sentimental favorites. And I just recently met the guy who wrote it, Steve Englehart. He was at GalaxyCon here in San Jose a week or so ago. I had him sign it, and it's Defenders number 11. And this is called pop. This is what we would call pop art. See this corner art here? That's sort of like, that's very Silver Age-esque. This is Sal Buscema art, one of my first and favorite comic artists here. And there's Steve Englehart. He signed it for me a week or so ago. I had a nice chat with him, and he did this over 50 years ago. He barely remembers doing it because he's been writing for all that much time. But this was a fun story. I highly recommend Defenders 1 through 11. Written by Steve Englehart. The Defenders were started by Roy Thomas with Marvel Feature number 1. These are by far the better stories. The artwork is fabulous. A great story. This is my most favorite run of all comics, and it ends here with Defenders 11. Then it starts to get more modern after this, but this is just a great fun read here. This is the most powerful team in Marvel. You got Doctor Strange, the Incredible Hulk, the Submariner, who is Marvel's first character, and the Silver Surfer. And that is a super powerful lineup here. But again, that is this is my second pick and one of my most sentimental picks. I'll always have a Defenders 11 in my collection.
I love how you said the strongest, because that's some heavy hitters when it comes to certain powers and strengths. I remember as a kid with the cards, reading the back and looking at the powers. I mean, there were some of them I would just like, it'd be ingrained, like he has an 8 and he has a 4. And I always was shocked how strong that those 4 guys, like Submariner and as well as Doctor Strange. As a little kid, I was like, what's the big deal? But like the magic user, and how strong. Yeah. And that's a cool thing.
Well, there's one other character on here that isn't on here, and that's the Valkyrie. She's from Asgard. So this team is by far the most powerful team in Marvel. I dare say, including the Valkyrie, the most powerful team in all of comics. They could beat the Justice League hands down with this team.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that art.
So that book says it's 20 cents.
20 cents. Yeah, that's the last.
What's that book going for now?
This is not a very expensive book. You could find this for about $10-$20 depending on. This is a pretty high grade. I've got one. I overpaid for one, a 9.0. If you wanted a 9.8, it's probably 9.8 is the highest rate for grading. I don't know, $500. But that's because it's in pristine condition. Yeah. I don't go for the 9.8.
I actually was learning that from a YouTuber that the 9.8 like rating and not being a 10 or a 9.9 or right. I was watching a show and they were kind of going through the whole list and explaining that, unlike like collecting cards. So that's kind of cool.
But see, in my collection, I only have a handful of 9.8s. I don't have any 9.9s or 10s. Those are pretty rare. But this is in this is in great condition. I didn't pay much for it. You look for deals when you can find them. Most of my collection is that way. But as long as it's in your collection, as long as you take care of it, this is in Mylar, by the way. This is a 2 mil Mylar, so this will last 100 years plus protecting it. I don't care about the perfection. The problem with perfection is expensive. And I don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the perfect book. As long as it's good readable condition, it presents well, that's all I care about, and it's much less expensive.
Nice. Well, I'm going to agree with some of the comments here. Loving the collar, nice ink. That cover was pretty sweet, man. There's something about, and again, that's the thing that I think that when I was going into comic book shops, although I wasn't getting them, they're definitely attractive, right? Like it draws your attention to it, and that's something to say. Obviously, unfortunately, with comics, you do have to judge the book by its cover sometimes.
That does count. That does count.
It does open you up to reading it. If the cover's not great, sometimes it doesn't bring us in. But yeah, that's a cool one there, man, for sure. That's two features of Hulk in a row, man. Are we making? We're spotting a trend here. We're spotting a trend here.
Yeah, I do love that.
All right. Kurt, so you're up for your next one, man. What you got?
Yeah, I'm up, and I'm gonna go with one. I don't have this book anymore. I wish I did. It's just one of those, and I've looked to get them. I could probably pick one up in an affordable time. But I'm gonna go again when that run was going, where I was starting to collect. That was early '90s to about Hurricane Katrina. So that was about a 15-year span, 12, 14-year span that I collected. And I probably, had 1,200 books, right? I would say, and maybe a little more. I don't know, a couple long boxes. But one of the things that I just fell in love with, and Dan, I kind of hear this from you. You might kind of clap back a little bit, but one of my favorite things about comic books was the art. It was much like Andy. I wasn't a huge reader, and what I did love about comics was the reading style was different. You weren't reading like a novel. Generally, you're reading thought bubbles and things of that nature. But I really love the art, and going into the LCS. Early 90s, looking to see what I would want it to get. I ran across this book, and again, I don't have it. So I'm going to go with the first time I had ever seen an Image comic, and I'm going with Spawn #1. And I had it. I had probably the first 12 books back then, maybe the first, I don't know, I would say up to 12, 13 books. But Spawn #1, Todd McFarlane, we all know, he helped with Spider-Man and moved over and kind of helping launch that with Jim Lee, the Image. But from that, it's almost like my wrestling fame. I love WWE and WCW, but I didn't really follow WWE anymore. I started almost everything I had, man. Whatever Image put out, even if it was crap, and a lot of it was, I purchased it. Or like I said earlier, I stole it. So I loved Image. I do have a small picture here, but yeah, I'm going with Spawn #1, and this is it right here. This is a 9.8 for sale right now, but yeah, and it's going.
Does it say what they're asking for it for 9.8?
Huh?
How much?
It says a 9.8, and at first appearance it says $24. So I don't know.
That must be a live bid because that's going to go for a lot more. That's going to go for a lot more than $24. Yeah. That's going to move quite a bit.
I love Spawn as a character. I hated his movie, but it was one of those books that did keep me going. And then losing that series really hurt. I really hated that. But yeah, so Spawn won.
Well, Spawn was the guy that I was McFarlane toys, right? That's just what I think of.
Which is what all these are up here.
When I would go to the comic book shop, somebody mentioned Kiss action figures, the McFarlane line of Kiss action figures. I have those in my office. They had the Spawn ones too. That was, as a kid, the coolest line of action figures to me because it's just the intricate detail. Obviously, the artwork in Spawn is really cool too. But a lot darker comic than, maybe your Avengers or your, some of those
and then
guys.
I might be wrong. Dan, you could correct me. I think it's Spawn 2. Spawn number 2 was the Spider-Man cover redone, right? Or vice versa?
That I don't know. I know the Spawn 1 cover. I'm looking it up right now on eBay to see what that would go for.
So
I see one for sale for $170. So it's probably $150 you can get that for because it says best offer. Let's see Spawn 2 because I've never seen
Spawn 2 is the exact cover of the Spider-Man book that he did. Well, I'm not sure which number it is, but there's a Spawn. One of the Spawn books matches the Spider-Man cover, and I thought it was Spawn 2. Maybe it's 3 or 4, but I had all of them, and then I miss them. And those are some of those books that I really love.
The Spawn 2 is a Batman homage cover, and it's Todd McFarlane. Come on, you talk about a guy who just came into his own. I mean, people just absolutely loved his approach, and everything he did turned to gold. And I have a number of McFarlane comics in my collection here, mostly Spider-Man and some Hulk runs. They're just so unique. He has such a different grasp on everything, and that's what, as you said, it grabs your attention. It just does. You don't want to throw it away.
How many folds could he put in Spawn's cape? I mean, it was just the whole thing was always filled.
Well, when I started collecting as a child, again, the artwork was
Spawn 8.
So I started to pile up, and all of a sudden the pile would fall over, and then I have to get a box and all that. And by the way, my father hated comics. He hated me collecting comics. I don't know why, because I was reading something, one of the great things about reading comics is that, hey, a child is reading something, and Kirk, you and I talked off the air about this. That one of the things that comics never really got was the appreciation for children to read. When who is it? Who did the Harry Potter series? J.K. Rowling. When she came up with her new book, you'd see it in the news media. Oh boy, a wonderful child is opening a book and reading. Comics never got those accolades. And they should have, because again, I dare say for myself personally, growing up poor, didn't have much education. Because it wasn't accessible when I was a child. I dare say if I hadn't read comics as much as I did, I would be semi-illiterate as a young man. So I have a deep appreciation for comics because it helped me learn to read and form words and so all the rest of it. It was the only thing I had, but it made a huge difference in my life. And again, I have a great appreciation, and they still haven't got the credit they deserve.
So. Click to me, Andy. So this is what I was talking about. So I had both of these.
Yeah, Spawn 8. That's what I was looking at.
It was Spawn 8. And then there's actually a black. There's also a black one, but those are all McFarlane, and he redid it for Spawn because he did that one during the Venom run. So
let me ask you guys something. The current rate, if you say you get a McFarlane book, I don't care what it is, and you have Todd McFarlane sign it, I think it's about $100 for him to sign it. Is that worth it to you guys?
If I was more of a McFarlane,
it would probably be worth it to me to get it at least once.
Okay,
but if I wasn't if I didn't, a lot of my comic world is that late 90s. And McFarlane was one of the guys. And plus, I'm a baseball guy. He loves baseball. He collects all the home run balls.
I do like watching McFarlane's.
One of the things I would just share real quick, Andy. One of my favorite things to watch is Todd McFarlane online.
I was just about to say it. Just
Dude,
about to say that.
he'll come online and want to. I think it was like his Facebook or his Instagram, and he would just go online. He's like, "Hey guys, I'm just going to draw Spider-Man today. You ready?" And
he's very personable. I'm like people
wow.
like that. Some people hide from the public. He's not. He's the opposite of that. He wants to be like Stan Lee. Stan Lee was very open. I remember Stan Lee back in the day. You could walk up to him and shake his hand and talk to him. And
it goes
towards the
back
end of
to that other thing that you were saying, like nerds and comic book, artists and all these guys kind of fit in that world. Obviously, it wasn't really big back then. And Todd is one of those guys that was like, man, it's kind of cool to be him. He's kind of hip. Like he was into the horror thing. I remember just watching several things on it. I was like, that's not the normal guy that you usually watch,
Yeah.
So, anyways, there you go. That's my second book. So, Andy, you're up, man.
All right, man. So, if you know me, I kind of throw some wrenches, which we throw wrenches at people in our comments, which I believe everybody's got them right now. But I throw some things out there when I'm not as well versed in things, and these things I don't think are going to be super controversial. But when I was thinking comics, I was going kind of broad, right? And we had talked through a text message earlier about, hey, do we consider this? Are we going to consider this tonight? We may or may not. I'm using comic in the broad sense, and I'm going to give you my favorite comedian. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do. No, I'm not doing that.
I swung past that nasty off-speed pitch.
So, comic though, I'm going to go. This is actually one that is a comic strip, right, in the newspapers, right. If I'm going to tell you probably the most popular one of all time, it's this one. It may be arguable with some other ones, and I get that. But I'm going to go for my TJ Jazzy Jeff. I'm going to debuted in, let me pull it up again real quick just so I have it here. I think it was 1978 was the debut of this, and obviously has just stood the test of time. We're talking about Mr. Jim Davis himself, Garfield. Garfield is going to be my pick here, and here's why. Now, I would wake up. I shared before. I would wake up with my dad, and I would go and we would watch SportsCenter and stuff like that. But my dad was a newspaper reader, believe it or not, which today is not really as big of a thing. I think maybe it's still technically a thing, but I would just grab it just to read the comic strips, right? Some of those really short things, those funny little tidbits, and a lot of them, to be honest with you, were like way too dry of humor for me. So there's like the Dilberts. Some of those different ones that were out there that like I was even like looking back and reading through them today, and I was like, where's the punchline? Like it's not funny. This is not funny. But Garfield was consistently hilarious, man. The fact that, hey, look, we're live on a Monday tonight, right? He hated Mondays, his love of lasagna, his laziness. These comics were just fun. It was kind of I feel like, and I was thinking about it today, like the world now, as far as media goes, loves short content. Like this was like really quick little, you can read these little strips in like 10 seconds, right? And you had a couple that wound up on there. But Garfield is the goat of the when it comes to newspaper comic strips for me. Obviously, it's branched off into movies and all kinds of TV shows and all kinds of craziness that's happened. I mean, heck, he's got a balloon and like the Macy's Day Parade and stuff too. So he's an iconic character. But I would read this, and I remember that Garfield was really like the only one of those comics that I actually enjoyed. So I had to bring it up today. You can tell me it counts or it doesn't count, but it's already made on my list. So there's no going back. So TJ Jazzy Jeff, we're going Garfield. His friends and enemy at times.
So we're talking specific comics. So which comic strip did you what newspaper did you take this one?
I'm not gonna the Times-Picayune.
I'm playing.
That's what we're gonna go with. I don't know.
No, man, I love Garfield. Underrated movies. These recent movies are
hilarious, dude.
And especially if you got young kids. My kids love them. The newest one was really good. I love Garfield. I would say though, as more of a athlete and more of someone that likes a little stronger character, I leaned more towards Heathcliff. So just
jeez. Hold on a second here. Hold on. I'll be right back. Give me a second.
There were some different ones out there, man. You remember?
We ran him off.
Resits was one. There was like all kinds of different. What was the Viking guy?
The Viking guy.
I see him right now.
It starts with a Y, right? Right. Yo, I don't know. Help us out.
All right. Okay. I was looking for. I have Garfield comics. I was looking for one. I couldn't find one, but I got one in this pile here. Here's a Heathcliff for you. That's a cool cover, by the way. That's a super cool cover, by the way. I love all comics. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not.
What I love is how fast you got that.
It's not easy. You're picking me on a good day here, guys. But I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on YouTube. I'm going to rule in Andy's favor. That does count. That does count. Absolutely.
Yes.
For a few reasons. One, in the old days, I'm going way back here, turn of the century, of the last century, where the comics, what was in the newspaper, they put them in comic book format. So you put the entire, run in here. And I had one. God, this is another painful memory. I had Superman #2 from 1939, and it was not original. It was what they had in the newspapers. They put in that particular comic, but it was still super cool. It's 5 figures plus if I still had it, which was stupid and painful. But Andy, the most important part that I heard from your presentation was that it brought you happiness. You were happy because of the character. That's all that counts.
Yeah,
you were entertained. That's all that this is all about. If you are informed, or if you're entertained or fascinated or whatever, if it grabs your attention, Hagar the Horrible. Love that.
That's who it was. I was trying to think who that guy was.
Not Sammy Hagar, Barry. Come on, man.
Dude, Barry's got the best.
I don't know about this guy sometimes. I don't know, man. What's wrong with you? But no, that's a great pick. There's nothing wrong with it.
I love the pick. I'll just say this. I love comic strips. I remember watching them. So this is something, and I'm a kid in the 80s. So Dan, when I was a kid, you don't have the internet, right? Like you can relate to some of these things, but here's my favorite thing to do in the morning. My dad would always get the paper. He would get coffee and a buttered toast. He would dip that toast in his coffee and let me eat it. And I can remember that like yesterday. And on top of that, I would go right to the sports section and see who hit the home runs last night. I'm looking about the stats. Andy hates stats. And then the very next thing that I would do is go and get to the comic strip to read Dennis the Menace, Garfield, Snoopy, Charlie Brown, you name it. I love all of them. I was just bringing up Heathcliff because of the cartoon, and I loved the Heathcliff cartoon. So, and I'm a cartoon guy. So, but I love both of them.
I love Calvin and Hobbes. That was a great run.
Absolutely.
The Far Side with Larson was his name.
I used to love picking the Far Side books up at like the bookstore or the whatever that long one.
Paperback, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So Andy, great pick.
Andy, great pick. So hey, look, we're halfway through, and we've got some good ones, man. We've got. I'm sure we're about to hit some heavy hitters. I know my next two are very sentimental, or at least, and then I can only imagine where Andy's going to go. But we got a little bit of a break while we have a few people here. If you guys don't know, Andy and I are both pastors. We're both teachers, parents, mentors, leaders in all kinds of ways, coaches. And one of our favorite things to do, and we're talking comics, so if you're here, you probably peruse these, is we go to conventions like comic book conventions, video game conventions, and we get to, and I'm wearing the shirt right now, Louisiana RetroCon is in 3 weeks. I just saw him post the other day. The next Louisiana RetroCon, we're going to be there, Morgan City. There's a couple Power Rangers that are going to be there. There's the Five Nights at Freddy's guys are going to be back. If you were there last year on Sunday, it was the first time we ever got to preach at a convention. And a shout out to my boy Davey and all those guys that are over there. And I'm just going to say this year we're getting to preach again, and we are the MCs of the event. So we're going to walk around the whole thing and interview all the booths and see what everybody's got. We're gonna have a blast. And so I'm preparing the message right now. We've met a ton of these guys there, like Carnage Perez, who was on. He's a wrestler. and I'm going to do my message this year on wrestling. So it's just going to be a little fun, nerdy message towards the con. And Andy, we've got some other friends that we got to talk about. One, we were just talking about coffee back in the day where I used to dip some coffee. You got a good friend that is kind of a pseudo, not sponsor, but really close friend of ours. Tell them about the Village Coffee.
Yeah, man. If you're a coffee fan, we talk about these guys every week. I don't have the coffee because it's too late this time, but Village Coffee. I know everybody's got their own favorite kind of coffee. They probably sometimes we get stuck in our ways, but I would challenge you, just give them a try. They ship to the States. If you go to villagebeans.com, you can go in there. You can sign up for their email list. They give you like a 10% off coupon plus some coffee lessons. They post it on their social media too. They got all kinds of cool stuff, but 2 signature roasts of theirs. They've got the Mexico and the Ethiopia blend. I'm a fan of the Mexico one. I actually had some Ethiopia today too. It's fantastic as well. If you want to buy them just by the pound, or if you want to buy K-Cups, they do 10, 20, 30, 50 of them you can buy. Go to villagebeans.com. Just villagebeans.com. Very super simple. It's awesome stuff. I highly suggest it. I'm a bare minimum 2 cups of coffee a day kind of guy. I'm starting to be that I need a cup of coffee at about 2 o'clock kind of guy. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, go check them out, villagebeans.com. Let them know that we sent you from the Rushmore Show. And I don't know if that does anything for you, but hey, maybe you like coffee.
It should soon. We're gonna have an NIL deal with him. Right here is our next group, guys. And Andy, we got Culture Box, and these are our friends, and we got 5 different creator sites that we partner with. I was just watching one of them last night. Those guys at the Cellcast having a blast. Friday night, and Jacob's back, and he took a hiatus for getting married. And we've been on their show a couple times. We've been on all these guys' shows a few times. But Andy, I think let's share somebody today.
Well, you already mentioned it. I was planning on talking about them, but hey, let's hear about our friends over at the Cellcast. The Cellcast hosts Jacob and Drew review animated movies and TV shows, discussing what they appreciate about the medium in whatever form it takes. Whether it's a traditional hand-drawn animated movie, claymation shorts, or a 3D CGI series. Check out some animated reviews when you subscribe to The Cellcast at thecellcast.podbean.com. And don't forget, Cell is spelled with a C and a single L at thecellcast.podbean.com. There's our friends over at the Cellcast. Go check them out. Let them know the Rushmore Show sent you.
Hey, and one last thing while we're here, I just want to go over what we're going to do next month. We're going into sports. Got a lot of friends here. Very first show coming out of the gate. I believe. Whoop, wrong one. Not that. That's this month's schedule. Oh, I forgot. I moved them up here.
There it is.
Yeah. So look, this is what we're going to be doing. So we're starting September. We got our guy Houdat Pat coming on. Houdat Pat, by the name, he loves Saints. So we're going to do Saints all time. We've got our boy Dylan Thibodeau coming on for college coaches. Paul Teagarden, who was just in the comments, obscure sports, things you'd find on the Ocho. And then my man Chris Gordy, who is a sports radio guy in the Houston area. I worked with him at Blockbuster. He's going to do college football players. And then we're going to finish October. Zach's Collectible. He's in the chat. Football rivalries. My 2 best friends, Paul in Ohio, other known Brian Swartz. They've been on the show before. Baseball Hall of Fame snubs. And then Vintage Sports Flipped. These guys rock an amazing reseller sports channel. And our guy Voggs. He's going to be on for stadiums. So love to have all those guys hanging out with us. And that is, let's put that nice, beautiful ring around us. And yeah, man, it's time to get ready and get back into this thing. And
looking back though at that, looking back at me. Sorry, that's literally what I thought of when I just.
Yeah, you just pulled a Kirk immediately.
I mean, no, that is definitely a thing. Hey, throw back those. What's coming up things again, real quick. I just wanted to. I think it was the first one. I don't know where we have it. Yeah. Obscure sport. No, Chris Gordy. That's what I was going to talk about. So Chris Gordy, man, I went and checked him out on social media. This guy's like the real deal. He's like a legit podcast, like ESPN level stuff, dude. This guy, that's amazing. I just he comments on
look, when we get him on here, I'm going to try and get him to get us a Houston star on here. As long as it's not Altuve, we're good. Maybe Bregman. Let's get Breggy Bombs on here. But
that might be next to Dan De La Torre. It might be the best celebrity that we've had.
Yeah, we'll talk to Chris. Was like, hey, Chris, man, how can we get one of these Houston guys up on this thing?
Bring him on, man. Bring him on. Can we get Yao Ming? Can we get Yao Ming in the house?
Sure. I'm sure. Yeah. But I worked with him. So, little known fact, Kirk spent some time working for the Dish Network, and Dish Network bought Blockbuster, so they put things inside of it, and Chris was the manager while he was going through school to be a radio caster. And when he got the job, I was so happy for him. He did AM radio first, and he was sitting out that way, and then he ended up getting the job in Houston and moved out to Houston.
See if we can get CJ Stroud on the show. I think he's pretty.
Don't even tempt me with a good time. Don't even tempt me with a good time. Who's their running back now? They got a good running back now too, don't they?
I should probably look up my Houston sports facts.
Well, we have a fantasy draft coming up. By the way, our fantasy football draft is coming up, and we're going to go live with it. If you guys want to join the fantasy football league, we're open to going to 12. We have one more. We have 11 right now, and our guy that was on our show a couple weeks ago would like to join us, but we need a 12th guy. If anybody wants to be the 12th man, that's A&M.
Joe Mixon. There you go.
So, anyways,
Joe Mixon is on there along with Cam Akers and Damian.
There you go. I knew there was somebody out. Joe Mixie. Shin Boozy's in the house. That is Paul. So, Shinzubi, I should say. You need to bring Dan back for his top 5 Barry Bonds moments. Is this a Dan? Hold on. Should we be banning Zach? Should we ban Zach?
Here's my little Barry Bonds guy right there. Hey, did you take steroids? Yeah, no, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything wrong. Come on, man. Admit it. Come on, admit it. You took steroids like everybody else. No, I'm in denial. That's my Barry Bonds moment, guys. I don't like people that if you made a mistake, fine. Admit it. Just that's totally fine. He and Clemens to this day are still in complete denial, which is why they're out of the Hall of Fame.
We're gonna go. So we got Hall of Fame snubs coming up. We're gonna definitely talk this out. But I'll just say your A's guy is much more a hatred for me than Barry Bonds.
Talking about McGuire?
Jose Canseco. He outed
Canseco. Oh, him too, right? He's a weird guy, by the way. Canseco's a really strange guy. I met him once, but I didn't mean to.
Hey, so I did. I met both of those guys, and back when I was a kid, I loved Canseco more than McGuire, because Canseco signed autographs and McGuire didn't have time for us. Well, that run when he actually did have the run, I became a huge Big Mac fan. During the 62-70 run. So, anyways, yeah. So, anyways, Dan, you're up. Let's finish.
Okay. All right. So this is issue number 3, right? We're working on.
Yeah. This is Abraham Lincoln, number 2 on your list.
Okay. Here we go. I just took. This is the top loader. I use these for extremely special comics. I rarely take it out of this for this reason. Back in 1988. I met Stan Lee for the first time, and it was at the Oakland Convention Center. It was at I forget what the con was. And back in those days, you could just walk up to him. There was no security, no nothing. Bob Kane from Batman fame was supposed to be the headliner. He didn't show up. He got sick. And there's Stan Lee all by himself in the corner. I walked up to him, and I said, "Sir, would you sign this?" And he did. Oh, gosh. And it was Fantastic Four number 3.
Oh, my God.
He opens it up. And he opens the book up. He's left-handed, and he signs it, and he closes it very carefully. And he says, "Good, I didn't tear it." We had a little laugh. And I was very shy back in those days. I thanked him for it, and I walked away. But, again, I could have had an hour conversation with him. But that was my Stan Lee moment. This is an extremely expensive book. This is the first appearance of the Fantastic Four's uniforms, their Baxter Building, where they have their that's their not their pogo, I forget that the Fantastic car. It's in really good condition. I need to get this slabbed, put it in, and I'm gonna use EGS grading. That's a smaller company, but I trust this company. It's in probably a 5.0 condition. The value of this with his signature, I'd say 7,000 to 8,000. You know, it's a memory that you can never replace. You know, but that is a really powerful book. The Fantastic Four, because the movie's about to come out here, these are going to absolutely skyrocket. So I will never ever sell it. In fact, when I stupidly sold my AF-15 and my two Tales of Suspense 39s, I stopped this. I said, no, I can't let this go. So I kept it in my collection. Thank God that I did. I would be horrified if I ever lost this. But that's my number 3 book here. This is literally where the Fantastic Four starts, the whole story run. I mean, issues 1 and 2 is when they first started the whole thing, but this is when they became a team. So anyway, that's a tough book to get in high grade.
Wow. And so if it was a 9.8, what would that go for?
6 figures. Oh, 6 figures easy. 6 figures easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So this could be, I mean, seriously, this could be one of my most expensive books. I don't know, but with the Stan Lee signature, it's kind of hard to gauge. This is pushing 5 figures.
So
for this,
let me ask this: you said the Stan Lee signature's in the inside?
Yeah, he signed it on the inside.
So when they grade that, how does that do they write on there that there's a Stan Lee signator inside?
All right,
like,
this is. I need to show you. You get to load it. You just hit on a hot button that everyone needs to understand. I'll just grab out one book here. Here, let's go with this one here.
Because
this
you're technically never supposed to open the slab again. So how do they let you know?
Okay, this is CGC's slab. This is their famous slab here. This is actually Iron Man 170, another good book here. First time James Rhodes takes over the Iron Man armor. But see this stuff here on the top here? This is what they say is in the book. The grade here, this is high grade, 9.6 white pages. That's good. That's the best you can get. And then the writer, the artist, blah, 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 and something notable about it. First James Rhodes and all that. But what they'll say for CGC, they must witness the signature. They're very strict about that. So they would just say Stan Lee written on the inside, which is really stupid. This company started in the year 2000. People like Jack Kirby died before they started their companies. There's no way for CGC to witness such a signature. And if that was signed by Jack Kirby, they would say Jack Kirby signed on here or whatever. They wouldn't confirm it, which is really stupid. They've since changed that over the years. That's why I went to EGS grading, because the Tony Travato is a friend of mine. He has a small company. I'll show one of the slabs later. He will certify it, and see another company, CBCS, will look at it and have they have a program to see what is authentic and what isn't authentic. Any collector who's seen a Stan Lee signature know what a Stan Lee signature is. And so if that was signed, and it is signed, it should be notarized that it is an authentic Stan Lee signature. In fact, you know what? I got this one here. This is CBCS. This is the second largest company. This is second by far, but that's Avengers 4. Here we go. And see that is obviously a Stan Lee signature. Now what they do is they say, I don't know if you can see it here, verified signature. That's what this pink label is here. So they said, okay, our people say that's an authentic signature. We're going to verify that and put it in this lab. That way, people recognize, hey, it is what it is in here. CGC didn't do that for the longest time. They just started right now. It's a long, ugly story about slabbing companies and so forth. But
that's a great part. I always kind of wondered that, but on that book though, the signature's on the outside, and you can actually see it, and then you're going to put it in a slab, and you will theoretically never see that signature ever again. But
you'd have to break the slab, and that's the downside about these slabs. That's the first thing you notice is that, they're cool. The idea is to preserve and present a book. Like this is Avengers 4, a gorgeous book here. You want to preserve this as long as possible. And so since it's encased, it's not going to age. It's going to slow down the aging process. The only downside is you cannot crack this open. Once you crack it open, then it's like all this goes away. They can't confirm this because you've opened it and tampered with it. So it's here to stay as long as you want, or as long as the book will last. But there's a mixed bag regarding doing slabbing, and it's become a huge market over the last 20 years or so.
So Dan, I actually won this one.
Nice.
So that's a 9.8. White pages, Deadpool number 25.
Put it a little closer. That is a second generation CGC slab. This is their current and the more modern one. And they're very similar. They're very similar. The one I've got here is very similar.
Yeah, I won this
there's a difference.
Online with Paul. And so, yeah, we got
that's
that.
very cool. That's very cool.
Barry brings up a very
the
valid point here. Sealed comics are hard to read.
They're impossible to read. Well, it's like twisting your head around 361. You can do it one time, but then that's it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna jump in. Man, I love that is phenomenal. This book here I've seen go for a couple different prices. I think it got. I think you mentioned it. There were some movies that, whenever the movies come out or a new kind of run of things, they kind of the prices kind of spike or do those kind of things, and that's understandable. But this is probably one of my favorite comics of all time. It's obviously other than my George, and I'm gonna go with this Venom Lethal Protector number 1.
That's a cool comic.
And this is one of those books that I got. That listen, this is my original book from 93 or 94. This one survived Katrina. This one survived cool. Katrina. I lost almost all of them. Out of the Katrina books, I probably have about 25 that made it, and this is one of them. And I had the whole set. I had all of them. It was like part 1 of 6. I had the whole 6 set, and now I just have this one. And so, yeah, that's in my son's collection. It still has I got it for $225 sticker right there. Right there. Boom. So back in the day. So anyways, yeah. I'm gonna go with Venom number 1. And I love Venom. Venom's one of my favorite characters. It was on my Rushmore. And this book, I believe, spiked not long ago to go up quite a bit. More than most of my comics. So pretty cool. Cool to have that.
That's a foil cover. It's a cool cover. It's an iconic cover. And you've got a good collection going there. Don't short sell it.
Nice. Yeah, Venom is great. I'm a fan of that. When it comes to comic books too, a lot of times the villains are really kind of the more interesting, at least to me.
They can be, yeah.
What I love is on the back here. Look, check this out.
Michael Jordan.
Pippen.
Oh, Pippen, yeah.
With his Fleer Ultra. That's awesome.
Yeah, some of the ads and some of those things are super fun too. When you look at those, like every now and then they have those in the middle, and what they're selling and stuff is super fun. Yeah, Venom is great. Obviously, Spider-Man. I just remember always playing the video game. Was it Maximum Carnage, where you could play as Venom, which was
that commercial when he comes. We talked about that.
Yeah,
that commercial was pretty crazy.
Cool. Yeah. Cool one. Also, cool cover, like you mentioned. The foil looks really awesome.
Yeah, see that thing. I was into the art. I love the art, the foil. That just, man, I love that. So, on not my next book, but my first probably Benjamin, I'm going to share a story about the art. Cool. So, yeah. So I love this book. Yeah, I love Venom. Andy, what's up next?
All right, so I'm going to keep the trend going of being a little bit off the rails here. But I'll bring it back for my George. Don't worry. This is going to be, I guess, sort of a graphic novel that we're going to talk about here. It's definitely a comic book style. This is one that is actually my daughter's, believe it or not. Isn't that interesting? but it's one that we bought for them. And as a pastor, I have to put this out there, man. This is just really cool to do this. And I think your son has one too, Kirk. But I'm going to go with the Action Bible. Have you checked this thing
Yes.
Dude, this thing's so cool, man. Like, it's like comic book, but it's the chronological Bible. But what's really cool about this is, like, so let's face it. A lot of times, like, when Christian stuff tries to be cool or edgy or relevant, sometimes they can go over the top of trying to be relevant. It gets really cringy, right? Like, a lot of that kind of stuff happens where it gets cringy. But this is legit, man. This artist who put all this together, Sergio Correio, something like that. He's a Brazilian artist, but he's worked for Marvel and DC. So it's like legit stuff that's happening here. Also, when you read the stories in the Bible, for somebody who reads the Bible, like, there's so many times where I'm reading something, especially, I guess, at any point, but a lot of the Old Testament too, that I read and I'm like, dude, that would make an amazing movie or something. Like, they need to make the Samson movie, or or you go to Revelation, and you're talking about, like, how cool would this stuff be, and not Left Behind. But like, to do that kind of stuff, and they put this whole deal in an easy to read kind of thing. Now, we've always told our girls, like, hey, this isn't your Bible, but this is a cool way to get you interested in reading it. It's a fun way to do it. And again, it's in a whole novel. It's the whole book. It's obviously the Bible. But I'm going to go with the Action Bible to throw things out there, man. This is a really, really cool little resource.
Yeah.
For that. So again, count it as a comic. Don't count it. I don't care. It's on my list.
I got it.
I know you have one too.
Look, dude, this is what I love about them. Check this out. Check this. Like,
let me put you up. Yeah, dude. I mean, it's legit, man. Like
he's being hung by his hair, and like the bear and the lion. Like, it's cool. Me and the guy, we read a book or two out of this every once in a while. We're trying to read his real Bible, or the Bible he brings to school and to church. But this, I might need to jump back in this. You reminded me. I was like, gosh, I forgot I had that down there, and it's heavy. Dude, this is thick, man.
David and Goliath, dude, check that out. How cool is that? Cool. Like, it's just cool artwork, man. Anyway,
the comic I used to have, it was sort of, I thought it a bit strange because I was always into superheroes. This is probably back in the late 80s, was they had John Paul II as a comic in Marvel. And I bought it, and it was basically his life going through it as he becomes Pope. That I wish I still had that. Now you're inspiring me to go get that book again. Now the thing with we're all Christians here. We don't talk about that much. But the thing with the Bible, it was the way I see it. It's kind of a guidebook on how to live. If you need a book regarding, hey, all these stories of back in those days, that told you, hey, these people went through this. This is what they did. This is why they did it, and there's a moral behind it. And people today just they don't get that. They need this guidebook, and that's all it is. It's and people say that the Bible says this and the Bible says that. Same with the Constitution. Constitution and the Bible don't say anything. You got to read it. Then it says something to you. That's my always response.
Hey, I just want to say hello to Vintage. Vintage is going to be on the show. Go check his show out. He sells old vintage sports items, so it's really cool. He's going to come on the show, and we're going to do dunkers. Yeah. So, hello, Vintage. Welcome.
There's so much that I could say biblically, that it's just the importance of the Bible and the importance of again, those morals and things. But, it's we do have our reboot side of things too, show where we have some devotionals. And
so it says it's 230 fast-paced narratives in chronological order. So, it takes the gist of the book and puts it all together in some comic book form. So 230 comic books, like small.
But I appreciate this because this is a side of me I don't really get to show on other shows. Yeah. There's a spiritual side to me. There's a moral side to me. And I take life pretty seriously. And the reason why I'm on these shows, by the way, is that the world has gone to hell. It's really, really a bad place right now, and it's getting worse. And if I get on these shows and help out people like Sith and the Comic Canon show, if we can let people kind of forget and give them a smile for like an hour, then I'm doing my job. I'm helping my community. And there's no money in any of this. We do it because it helps the community. And so, but there needs to be more of this sort of conversation. Sadly, everyone's afraid to talk about these things. It's too controversial, you know. That's
I have a pet peeve on that. I have a pet peeve.
Let me just say this real quick. I'm glad you said this, because when you said this earlier, Dan, this was like, oh, I got to talk about that when we talk about this. He said it right there. The Bible is the original good versus evil story. There you go. Like, I mean, talk about that you know, kind of thread.
Yeah, I think back in the day, and just kind of not jump on a soapbox, but just to touch briefly, I remember as a kid, my parents would always kind of preach to my sisters and I that you never talked politics, money, sex, or religion. And honestly, I wish more parents would have honest conversations with their kids about politics, money, sex, and religion. I mean, it's just, people get offended. You're not supposed to be in my business, but that's the thing. Like, a lot of times people feel that, especially with Christians, we don't necessarily want to be in your business. We just want to show you well, at least for me, what God's doing in my life and what he's done in my life. And if you knew him, then I might, and it's kind of that fine line we walk. I love, Andy, that you brought this up, because this is so us. This is who we are. We always say, Dan, that we're not a Christian podcast, but we're not a Christian podcast. And so if you guys are hanging out with us, you're always going to get positive vibes. We're going to people that love not only the Lord, but people. And man, Andy, I didn't even think about this, and it's perfect for the list.
Yeah.
Well, two things on that. One is that I've recognized, because I've seen too many pieces of evidence to support this, I could not have made it this far in my life without a higher power. Someone is guiding me through and showing me. Everyone has difficult situations, and I'm always able to find my way out of them because of help from above. And coming back to the comics, I said the good versus evil element. I recognized early on that, you know, a lot of these stories are from the Bible. Superman was the first superhero, technically, but that wasn't the first story of someone who has incredible strength. That was Samson. The Samson story was fabulous. And people who could fly. You had angels, you know, people who could take to the skies, and that transferred in a way to comics. Now, I don't know if that was haphazard or the writers tried to say something, because remember, a lot of the ones I read were back in the 60s. It was a better time. The better society. Not today. Today is things have gone downhill in a big way, and it kind of shows with the entertainment. That's why I don't care for the entertainment across the board, whether it's music, comics, movies, whatever. There's no moral compass or foundation with it, and it shows. So, but anyway, that's my little soapbox for that.
Yeah, cool deal, man. Well, all right. So we've talked about this one quite a bit, and now we are to the top of the mountain. Our number one pick, we call him our George, Dan, with all of those millions. Let me ask you this real quick before you share your first one. Do you have an inventory of how many comics you have?
Well, we're on our fourth book, right?
Yeah, we're on the
last of the first four. Okay, great.
Yeah. So how many books in your collection do you have? Do you know exactly the number, or do you have a rounded ballpark figure?
I have 33 or 34 short boxes behind me. Short boxes I can't show it on the screen here. As opposed to the long box, which holds about, I don't know what they hold, 120 or whatever. I've got thousands of comics, you know. It really helps to have a very understanding wife. I mean, my wife is waiting. I said I'd buy her dinner because I said I was going to be on the show just to make it easier for her. But she's not a comic person. She just supports me. She knows this is important to me. So we just moved in here. This is a little condo we got about 3 months ago. It's smaller than the last place, so I'm having to be very strategic where I put everything. But this is literally the first thing I moved in when we moved over here.
Look, I don't mean to be nosy, but obviously, Dan, we kind of, whenever we connect with people, I go and search their social media, and I was looking for a picture for you, and I went scrolling, and I didn't have to go too far back to see you're not this isn't a long-standing marriage. You've only been married like 5-6 years, right? Something like that.
That's correct. Right. This is my second marriage. The first one just didn't work out.
A man at your age was still able to lock in the dream wife with comic 33,000. That makes me feel good. Now I can go out and tell my wife. Yeah, that is awesome.
If I didn't marry Tiffany, I would have been single. I was ready to be by myself, and I was okay with that. But I gave it one last try. I was chasing after her for years, and she kept saying no. It was a long story. Finally, I wore her down. I finally got her to go out with me, and the rest is history. So I'm a very happy man.
Barry wants to object with the gavel. You are a comic person. She is a comic person. She married you.
Well, I guess by default that's true.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, let's do the George. The number one pick, the best, your most whatever famous nostalgic comic ever to you.
The best one to me is the first one, and I bought this book off the rack at a 7-Eleven in Oakland back in 1976. It was a Bernie Wrightson cover, and I knew it was kind of different from all the other Marvel covers because Bernie Wrightson created Swamp Thing from DC. Well, he wrote Incredible Hulk number 197, The Man Thing, which is Marvel's version of that right here. And this I still have it to say. It's beat to crap. It's the heavy spontics, heavy wear, and so forth. But that is the very first comic I bought. That is my number one comic. It'll never be replaced. I've since bought several, higher grades. This is a really pretty one, and I'm looking for. I might get a 9.8 of this one here, but it's not the very first one I got as a child back in the day. This is Sal Buscema art on the inside. Wrightson, this is his artwork here. This character here, that is the collector, one of the elders of Marvel. Anyway, that is by far my most sentimental book. I've had it over almost 50 years now. So this I'll never get rid of because I can never replace that moment of my first, purchase of a comic.
Gosh.
So that's my best one.
That's amazing. 3/4 of your picks had the Hulk in it. And one that didn't had Thing in it, which is kind of along the lines of that. So I love the fact because I literally I could have segued into your pick after I asked, how many do you have? I was gonna a follow-up question. Well, what was your first one? And that's interesting that you brought that up. That is amazing. That's what this is all about, man. It's nostalgia. We've been doing 2 months of nostalgia, and to be honest, our whole show, the whole premise of our show is about revisiting nostalgia and the feeling that brings back. That is amazing.
Well, the feeling is your guys' heart. I mean, everything I have here has sentimental value. And that means that's something that means something personally to me. We're all people who have are sentimental. We value anything that brings us back our childhood or something that's special to us. And that's a special part of who we are. That's why people make fun of my comics. To hell with them. I don't need to talk to you. If you don't like it, that's fine. Go somewhere else. So.
I love the life lessons we're getting today. It's amazing. This is a great pick. That artwork is pretty cool too, man. I like, again, the color on that stuff, the action.
Yeah, I think this is the one and only Bernie Wrightson cover he ever did. He was mostly a DC artist. So to see a Bernie Wrightson concept of the Man Thing, very similar to the Swamp Thing.
Even the lettering, Hulk and the Man Thing, like the lettering's really cool on that. Yeah, that's.
And I didn't realize until not that long ago, this is a kind of a pricey book. In fact, there's a guy on Instagram. His handle is Hulk 197. I just learned about him yesterday. I need to find this guy because there's a interest in this particular book. I didn't know I got off to such a great start, but that's where it started. Again, almost half a century ago.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Kirk, any thoughts on this one?
I'm blown away thinking 76 years, geez, 1976, that you still have a book and it's in such good condition because I know you've probably read it a billion times, right?
Yes, it's been loved to death, yeah.
And that is what our show is about. I love the artwork on that. I love Hulk. I appreciate that, and I can appreciate it even more because of my number one pick. And it's my turn now. My number one pick is also my first book. ever. So, which is interesting. I didn't know that you were going that route. This book is next to nothing. It's you mentioned Fantastic Four just a few minutes ago, and my first book was a Fantastic Four book. I'm going with this is a Fantastic Four number 311, and the reason I actually got it wasn't because of Fantastic Four. It was because it was one of the appearances of Black Panther.
Yes.
And
Nice.
this book right here, I don't own it anymore. I've actually have thought about picking it up a few times in eBay or whatnot. And I just never pulled the trigger. But it was my first book that I ever had. It started my love for comics and geeky things. The story is right after Secret Wars 2. Steve Englehart was the writer, I believe.
My favorite writer.
Keith Pollard was the artist. So I actually didn't remember that. I actually went and looked it up and was just like, yeah, what's going on? But yeah, it's Fantastic Four 311. So that's going to be it's probably my most prized book. I lost it in Katrina, and I have wanted to purchase it a few times, but yep, that's it.
I have that book. That's a great book. And so you could, they're not that terribly expensive, but I would pull the trigger and get another one, put it in Mylar and just preserve it and enjoy it. Yeah,
that's definitely my it brings back so many memories. I remember exactly where I was when I got it. My mom worked at a Revco, and she used to do greetings cards. She would put all the cards in like Eckerd's and K&B and Revco and all these, which are probably places you have no idea about. They were all like convenience stores, like Walgreens or CVS, in the 80s and in the South here. And I went to work with her one day, and I helped her put the cards out. And right next to the cards was the magazine rack, and I was like, "Can I have this book?" And I brought it home, and that was my first comic. So
nice.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And before we get to Andy's pick here, Kirk, if I'm going to give us a spec for everyone here, because this is an underrated book. It's still affordable, believe it or not. And it's the reason why is because of the passing of Chadwick Boseman. When he died years ago, that really struck a heart. That hurt everybody in the community here. And as such, the first appearance of the Black Panther
52.
is extremely 52. So that's a 5.0 EGS grading, but that's his first appearance. Unbelievably unaffordable for his first appearance here. I don't know why to this day. Probably because they did replace the character. They went in a different direction. They went with Sherry. What was her name? I forget the other Black Panther. But anyway, had they recast it, this would have been far more expensive because Black Panther is a mainstay in Marvel. So both of you, I know it's probably $500-ish to get a decent copy, but that's a great steal for a main character who is. And by the way, think about this. This is also what impressed me with Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. This was made during the race riots in the 60s and so forth. And they came up with a black character. They didn't profile his skin color. They profiled his character and his abilities. And he became a mainstay in the Avengers. So why this book isn't, many thousands of dollars, I don't know. I recommend this to anyone in the chat.
They got one right here for $350.
Come on. Oh, sorry. That's my phone.
No, here's
$350 is a steal for that.
Here's a 9.2 that somebody's trying to go for $11,000.
Well, sure. That's a 9.2. That's a super high grade. But you can get a decent mid grade. I paid $500 for it, and it's 5.0, what I expected. So I don't throw out spec very often, but if somebody wanted something as their centerpiece in their collection, you can get that, and no one's going to complain that's not a Grail. So again, that's my recommendation for the day.
I Black Panther is way up on my list because of that book. I always loved Black Panther, and the Chadwick Boseman first movie blew me away. Like I was like, yeah, because he was one of my guys, and I loved it. So Cool, man. Thanks for the tip. That'd be a cool thing to get for my son for sure.
Yes, absolutely. All right, well, I'm gonna go into my number one, my George. This right here I have in my possession. It's right here. I'm looking at. I'm holding it right here. This was a gift from a good friend of mine, a friend of the show, but even more importantly than a friend of the show, just a friend of mine from a long time. He's been on the show. Daniel Eller is a good friend of mine, and I'm going to go to. So what I have in my hand right now is kind of a compilation. It's not the original of it, but they kind of compiled two comics into one to kind of do this just special here. And this came out. Let me pull up the actual date. I think it was like 1977 was the original when this came out. Yeah, I'm just going to say 77 because I couldn't find it on my notes here. But I'm going to a Marvel comic. This is a Marvel comic super special, and I'm going to open it up to what the actual original cover looked like. I'm going. You knew I had to do it. Number one.
That's great.
Kiss number one. With the blood in the ink, apparently too. You know what's cool, man? Is that like this is actually like a pretty cool comic. Doctor Doom is the villain in this one, along with Crimson Witch, who was actually written to be like an original, for this story. But yeah, I mean, there you go. You got Doctor Doom in here. You see that? He's you got Robert Downey Jr. himself in this one, and you got all these panels where you get to see Gene Simmons kicking him. You also have an appearance of the Avengers in here as well, which is just really cool. I knew Barry says he knew it. Fantastic Four is in here. I mean, there's just so many cool things that are happening in this one. And also, hey, since you only did Hulk on 3/4 of yours, let's throw Hulk in this one too. I got a lot of appearances of Hulk today. This one that I have right here, I'm going to go to Kiss 1 just because this is kind of what started it all. But then you've got they had Marvel Super Special number 5 right here. It was a really cool cover as well. Just a cool one there. And this is what I'm going with. I had to do this. Now, I said it plenty of times. I went to the comic book shop and I bought the Kiss dolls, if we want to call them dolls or action figures, whatever. I also have some other Kiss ones in here too. I'm obviously these are not the ones that I picked, but World Without Heroes 1 and 2. It's a cool little like both of them together. I don't know whether they go this way. I can't tell. But yeah, this is a cool little one too. Again, gifts from Daniel Eller too. Appreciate that. I've been holding on to these for a while. I had to do it, man. I had to do it because Kiss is my favorite. You can see them behind me right here. I'm a big Kiss fan. I got Kiss on my leg. I've got Gene Simmons tattoo on my leg. It's got me into music. They were my George of childhood heroes last week too. This is where I was going. If there was any band who was meant to be in a comic book, it was Kiss. I mean, there's no other one out there. Maybe like newer ones like your Slipknots and your Mudvaynes and things like that. But it was Kiss started all of that, really, honestly.
Yeah,
they're not autographed.
We knew you were doing that. We knew you were doing that. Anybody that's watched the show long enough knew it. Barry knew it. They need to get those autographed. That's what you need. But I just want to go back to my pick just briefly. You mentioned Doctor Doom. My first one. That's kind of who Fantastic Four's fighting is, a bunch of Doctor Doom's like henchmen. So that was kind of a part of that storyline as well. But yeah, I knew you were going here. I mean, we talk wrestling, you bring up the Kiss Demon. We talk music, you bring up Kiss. You talk now comics, you bring them up. Video games, we've brought them up. Like you said, they're Coca-Cola, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
So Dan,
I'm surprised. I'm really surprised when we did. Back to the Kiss number 1 though. Back in the day when Stanley authorized that to have them all, donate blood into the paint which went on the cover. I'm surprised it did that, and they wouldn't do that today, and not with the COVID and all the rest of it. But that was surreal, and that is still out there. People, in fact, I was at San Diego Comic-Con last month, and one guy was asking for that number 1 with the blood on it, and that goes for thousands of dollars, many thousands, if you can find it.
Yeah. So check this out. This is obviously this is a little compilation thing here, but there's the pictures of them giving their blood to be in the ink.
Oh yeah.
Like the whole story that's printed up there. There you go. There's Gene and Paul doing their thing. It's pretty interesting, man. It's cool stuff.
It was very cool.
Hey, so 18 plus, we have to give our Benjamins left. So we have probably about 15 minutes or so.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Rapid fire segment.
So 18 plus was asking how much longer we'd be on. So probably it's time for honorable mention. So we just finished our mountains, guys, and you knew Andy was going Kiss. And Dan and I went our first issue ever. Kiss is basically like your first issue ever too, Andy. I mean, it's like one of your like most prized. So I knew that was going. But now it's time to do our honorable mentions. And honorable mentions is just a way to kind of preserve and say these just missed the mountain. They're great books. They just don't make my top 4. So it's time to do all about the Benjamins. Let's get it. So, Dan, let me just catch you up. All about the Benjamins. We call it Benjamin for Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin is kind of in historic history considered maybe one of those guys that was going to get a 5th head on the mountain back in the day. And so it's kind of like the honorable mention of the Rushmore. So we call them Benjamins. This part, it doesn't have to go super in depth, but I'm sure you got some really cool books. We'd love to hear about them. But this is the cool part, though. Nobody crushed, and we're probably not going to crush. That's just how because there's such a big thing. But this one, we can't crush. So if somebody picks one that you happen to have hiding around, you got to pick a different one. So that's just how the rest of this is going to go. So, Dan, you're up first. What is the first one you think should make the mountain?
I'm just happy to have everything that I've got. I've been very blessed to have this collection here. And I got this one. This is one of the grails, one of the deep grails. And I got it for just under $1,000. And it's beat up. It's got tape on it and so forth and some restoration. But I don't care. It's all mine. Avengers #1.
Nice.
First appearance of the Avengers. And again, I got it slabbed. Would send it to EGS. Had a custom label. The red is supposed to complement the cover. But again, that is an iconic cover here. But again, having this in my collection, I'm a very, very happy and blessed man. Super cool to have. Underrated and underappreciated, undervalued too, by the way. So Avengers 1, first appearance of the Avengers.
Nice.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, wow. Those are like books that I would just wish I could see. So, look, I mentioned earlier that I loved Image, and I'm going to go with, it's not a great book, but it was their first book. I'm going with Rob Liefeld's Youngblood #1. There it is. Yeah.
Nice.
And I love the Image run. I loved it for the art, not necessarily for the story. I know the story gets a lot of stuff, but man, I just love what these guys look like. And it's the very first Image comic ever. So there you go. That's going to be my first one.
Very cool.
Well, I'm going to mention the only one left that I actually have a physical copy of. And this is just a shout out to a good friend of ours. I'm going Dope Smack, man.
Yeah.
So this is what's he say? New Orleans' first hero, although that's debated with Gambit and stuff. But our good friend Joe Mexican, he's been on the show before. We've met with him at the con. We're trying to get in his movie. He's looking for some bikers that are catch on fire, so that'd be kind of cool. But Dope Smack, man, this is actually cool. And for future purposes, this is actually autographed too, so you can see it right here. I've got it's kind of hard to see. It's in silver.
Yeah.
It's autographed. So if this is ever worth something, even if not, it's just cool to have a good friend's signature on it.
So Andy, I have that too, and I'm going to kind of cheat. And I'm not. This isn't my book because you just stole it. But what I'm going to do is,
right? You get whoa! I get back-to-back picks, baby.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to pick one of yours, I'm sure. But since I have back-to-back picks here, before you share that one, my next one is going to be probably the most nostalgic to me out of these next few that I'm talking about. And this is and I couldn't find the exact one because I'm trying to remember. They printed a ton of these. When I was in 7th grade, I remember having to do a book report, and I hated reading books. I hated it. I loathed any time we had to read an assigned textbook or anything like that. But I remember distinctly my teacher allowing me to go to the library and get this book. They had a graphic novel version of this book that I read and I went through, and that's what I did my book report project on. And I'm going with War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds. They had a graphic novel version. It was super cool. I remember
You've told this story. I love it.
And it was like really, that was kind of what I was like, okay, I can do.
And your teacher allowed it. Like you were like, can I use this? And she's like, yeah.
Yeah. So she was more interested in me actually
reading
and reading this. Because if you would have assigned me the novel or whatever, I would have not performed well. But it was good, man. So yeah, I remember that one for sure.
So cool, man. I was gonna save this for my last pick just because I wanted to shout out, but you did Dope Smack. So I'm gonna kind of cheat, and I mentioned that already. But I also do have Dope Smack with the signature right there. He was on our show. But Andy, we've had more than just Dope Smack on the show.
Oh yeah, come on, do it.
So I'm gonna here is Endangered, which they've been on our show, and so hold on. It's a run, but this top one right here, the artist for this one is Robbie Musso. He's been on the show. John has been on the show who wrote this. The artist is there, but wait, I'm not done. I know I'm kind of cheating. There's the artist's first book. It just came out. He's been on the show. And then last but not least, The Saint. He's supposed to be on the show. We never can make it happen, but hopefully he gets on the show this year. And then last but not least, Andy, Austin St. John signed this book, and he's been on the show as well. Just to kind of like, I was going to do it all at the end, and you had to share Dope Smack.
What was your pick? Was that one of your picks?
Yeah, so this is going to be it, man. This is going to be it. Just local artists that just love the Rushmore Show, man. I want to pick all their books and shout them out, man.
All right. That's cheating, but I will accept it.
Yeah. I knew you would.
All right, Dan, you get back-to-back picks now because we're going snake draft style. So you get two picks for your next two honorable mentions.
Well, I'm going to sneak one in here because there's a reason for it. This first book here is one I had over 30 years ago and was stolen, sadly. And I couldn't prove it. And back in the days, if I'd called the police on this guy, and I knew who it was, but I couldn't prove it, the cop would have said, hey, have your mom get another comic, all right? But this is a rare book. According to Overstreet, which is the price guide that everyone used back in the day, there was only 100 of these that were known to exist, and I had one. And this, just within the last 5-6 months, I found it again because I remember this marking on here because there's only 100. This was one of them. And this is a Golden Age book from 1946. It was the only time that Marvel ever did a super team. And this is the first appearance of that team. It's called the All-Winter Squad. And This is a rare, rare book. Again, beat the crap that whatever happened to it since it was in better shape. This is a 0.5, a pretty low grade. It's been pretty tore up here. But it still presents well. And again, a first appearance of that team. And they said there were two that are rare. There are less than 100 that known to exist. All Winter's 19. And there was no issue 20. There was 21. I did find a 21. This is also kind of low grade. It's a faux cover, but inside it is the real comic. So I'm one of 100 people in the world that can say I have one of each of these comics here. This is Golden Age. I personally believe this one here, that is the last Golden Age appearance of Captain America before he reappeared back here. I want to throw this out here. I just showed you this book. Where is it? There it is. So if that's the last Golden Age, and I think it is, he reappears here in Avengers 4. There was a timeline where he was under the ice, because if you saw the Avengers movie, he fell under the ice for decades and reappeared. So that's the last Golden Age, first Silver Age appearance of Captain America. So I can't prove it, by the way, because it's the records of comics back in those. There were no records. So you have to sort of piece together things, as best you can. The second book here is the last time I ever saw Stan Lee alive. And it was at the Comic-Con in San Jose. And I thanked him for everything. Back in '88, you walk up to him. The last year of his life, it took days to get to him. And I said, sir, would you sign this? I really appreciate it. And I thanked him for everything. Fantastic Four number 48. This is the first appearance of the Silver Surfer in Galactus. He knew this is Stan Lee's favorite character was the Silver Surfer. he knew exactly what it was. Now, he just been coming off of, what did he have? He had pneumonia or something. And that poor man stayed the entire week and all 3 days. He didn't have to be there. He was staying late. But he loved his fans. And when I showed him this, he gave a little smile, and I thanked him for everything, and he nodded. He couldn't respond. He didn't have the energy. But this is yet another special book here. So Fantastic 448 is my third pick.
Whew, I feel bad for picking Garfield now.
Wow. And that's good. So look, I'm going to go. This is a nostalgia book for me. I just bought this book at St. Tammany Collectors Con. It's a book that I lost in Katrina, but it was my very first ever Ninja Turtle comic, and I bought it for Canon, and this one's it right here. So, Archie Comics, number 14, the Ninja Turtle Adventures. And
Nice.
yeah, this was my first Turtles.
Put that up there. Sorry, put that back up. Nice. Look at that thing.
Yeah, and I love this book. We read it together, and yeah, this is just a lot of nostalgia. I love doing these things with him, man, and just kind of growing his love for it. So
nice.
There are people that absolutely their comic life is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a phenomenon. It just is. Some people have their icons just with the Turtles logo. So there's such a huge following with that. That started out as kind of a not a joke, but it wasn't meant to be a serious comic.
I really do like this Adventures line though. It's kind of more cartoony. It's it was before, like the original one was very it was more adult themed, I guess. Like it was more like blood and guts, that kind of thing. It was supposed to be that, but this was more like a cartoon. It was more like the cartoon we saw.
Right.
I loved dude, I had it. It was great. And $1. It says it's for $1. Wow.
That's a great pickup. See, again, great entertainment.
Yeah.
So, Andy, you got 2 picks. Finish this thing up, man.
Yeah, these two I didn't never have or read. I just this was research stuff. So this is where it gets boring for my side of things. So I'll go through them quick. I thought it was cool that in the 1990s there was a short-lived cartoon series, had an even shorter-lived comic book run. I'm going with Street Sharks #1. Street Sharks had the comic series, and you just brought up the Turtles, and let's continue that anthropomorphic vibe here too. I'm just going with Street Sharks because who knows. And then my last one is going to be kind of how I started my whole list today, based on the debut of one of my favorites. Let's go with the debut of my overall favorite of all of it, which I already talked about. I'm going X-Men #1, 1963. Mm-hmm. This is the you talk about Stan Lee is the writer of this, but the original lineup: Cyclops. You had Marvel Girl, or Jean Grey as she became known. You had Beast, prior to necessarily the 90s blue, 80s, 90s blue hair looking stuff. You had Iceman, Bobby Drake, and then Angel. That's your first lineup. They had the blue and yellow classic suits. I remember having X-Men cards, the trading cards with this look, that first class, right, or so of the X-Men. It's your debut of all of these things, including Magneto, Professor X, all this kind of stuff. That's where it all started. X-Men is my favorite. It's the only one to me that I really super care about out of all of these things. So I'm going to end my list with X-Men #1.
So
that's a fabulous pick.
I love that pick. I almost picked, and this is kind of side skirt it. I almost picked the other X-Men #1 book for this spot. But I thought you might grab that, and because I knew you loved X-Men, and I didn't know how much more you had left. So I actually have another favorite book that I had. It was a 6-book series run, and it just made Marvel some of the most money ever. But I'm going with the Infinity Gauntlet. I had the 6-book, Adam Warlock, the whole run there, but this is it right here. Bang. This is it. And I absolutely
Nice.
yeah. I love
Great.
that whole series. I had the whole series, and yeah, it brings back memories. Like thinking that, yeah. Here's kind of the run here. This is all 6 of them. There you go.
That was a great comic run. Great
Yeah,
series.
and I love it. Thanos, Galactus. It's probably, yeah, it was probably my favorite. I almost put it in my top 4. Yeah. So, Infinity Gauntlet #1 would be my pick, but the whole run was great.
So my last one here, guys. I told you I'd sold comics that really I regretted, and it was painful to this day. But this sort of healed some of that wound, and to get this back, it cost me quite a bit to get it back. But it makes the collection. It's a huge, proud, probably my most prominent and possibly my most expensive, second to the Fantastic Four #3, and that's Tales of Suspense 39, first appearance of Iron Man.
Wow.
So I did get one, and it's a low grade 2.0, but it's complete, presents well. It's not restored. It's the blue label. Well, you want a blue label because that means it wasn't tampered with. It's beat up, but it is the original. This is where Iron Man started. The entire Iron Man line. I mean, of course, it came into huge prominence with Robert Downey Jr. with his first role as Iron Man in 2008, and then of course with the Avengers. Because he was a dominant character, and now he's come back with Doctor Doom. We'll see where that goes here. But this is a major deep blue grail, something I will never sell because I can't afford it if I ever sold it again. So hopefully this will continue to grow in value, and it's the main staple of my collection.
Nice.
Now,
12 cents. Look at that up there.
Yeah.
12 cents.
This is Jack Kirby, and who else wrote the cover on this? Don Heck and Jack Kirby cover. Kirby did this part of it. You can tell Kirby's work. I've seen Kirby's work before. I recognize it immediately. Don Heck sort of did. It's kind of a goofy. His head is sort of like slunched over, but that's an iconic cover. Anyone would love to have this in their collection. If you have the many thousands of dollars, which again, I didn't have that kind of money at the time. I just happened to have enough money to get my hands on it. And when I bought it, the guy wanted. Well, he wanted $4,500 the best offer, and then you have 3 times to make an offer, and then the guy responds whatever. And if you do that, my recommendation, if you're going to bid on something like this, don't waste anybody's time and say I'll give you $1 for it. That's kind of a waste, and you could really piss somebody off to do that. I said $3,500. We went back and forth, and he came. I said $3,500. He said, okay, how about $4,100? And then I said, well, how about 38? No, what did I say? 3,700. He said, oh, how about 3,850? He's coming down. You don't see that with a deep grail like this. When you have a deep grail, a deep blue grail, people don't come down in price. That by itself is rare. I got it for 3,850, and that was a great, great deal. He wanted, speaking of the Turtles, he wanted Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, the second print, which is still damn expensive. Even with the 3,850 I gave him, it wasn't enough. He had to put some of his own money for that second print. But he was a true Turtles fan, so he was happy. I was happy, and again, that was a great. It was just luck on my part to find someone willing to work with me.
I'm, and I know that I've watched you guys on Spine Ticks and all these other shows, and just some of the collections, and I've always just been like, wow. And I just kind of wrap my head around like, if I had $3,500, would I buy a comic book, right? And it just probably not, but I probably would spend $3,500 on the rare baseball card. Like, I mean, because that was my thing, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And it means nothing different, right? Like if it was a rare Mickey Mantle signed autographed whatever baseball card, I would like, yeah, sure. But it's just so interesting how people's collections are. I mean, Andy, it would be probably something. I mean, can you imagine getting
anything music related?
Right, say a drum set signed by John Bonham.
I mean, that's priceless.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there wouldn't be even a number to put on that.
But I mean, you would spend that money though. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
absolutely. If somebody came down to $38.50 on a drum kit signed by Bonham, absolutely, I'm doing it today.
Right.
So, anyways, man, Dan, thanks for being here. It kind of last notice jumping in. Had a blast with everybody in the comments. Thanks for rolling this thing with us, guys. We're at the end of nostalgia. Now we're moving into sports. I mentioned what our sports were. Do you have a Davy Crockett Dell, Dan?
No, I don't. I do have some Dell comics. I've got a whole. I branched out in areas I never thought I would branch out to. We don't have time to get into it. Maybe next time if I come on the show, we can talk about that. I've gone way diverse. Even though I don't have my Amazing Fantasy 15 anymore, this is by far a smarter collection because I'm older. I'm able to see things I didn't see. I got into things I never thought I'd get into. But regarding the money, I didn't think twice about it to get that back. You know, it meant so much to me. Like you'd buy a card if it meant so much to you. You know. But
so I'll just say this: like, there's one thing, my one collectible regret in my life, and I won't go deep into the story, but I also had a special thing stolen from me, and I know exactly who it was. When I was, 9, I think, maybe 8, my brother-in-law took me to a baseball card show, and I got Mickey Mantle's autograph on a American League baseball. And wait, pause.
I was going to say, let's go to commercial break.
Same guy went with me to get this about a year later. It's Brooks Robinson. And I got the Mickey Mantle autograph, and I cherish that more than anything. And it got stolen about 10 years ago. And man, it just heartbroken. But
you guys are more sports guys than anything else, and so am I. I'm not a huge sports guy like you guys are. I'm more localized. You know, I'm an A's fan, also a Cubs fan. But I was telling Andy off air before you showed up that I've never got a foul ball. I've been to I don't know how many baseball games.
I saw this picture.
Yeah, and this guy who's a Cubs fan like me, I told him the story. I said, I'm 60. I've never got one. You know, the players give kids them because they're cute and adorable. My cuteness and adorableness was long ago. And I said, I don't know, what I can do. He said, let me see what I can do to help you out. So he goes to somebody he knows down there, grabs this baseball here. This is an actual Major League Baseball. And he tells me about it. You can see it's kind of dirty. He educated me something about that. There's some mud they put on there.
Yeah.
Because it has to have a certain grip and so forth. And he said it's a father and son duo and all that. But you know what? This was in use at a Major League game. And that means something to me. That means a lot to me. It's a piece of history. It's a piece of the game that we love so much. So again, there's still the child in me. I felt like a 5-year-old going home that I got my baseball, my foul ball, because somebody kind enough was able to help me out with that. So in the end here, guys, there's nothing wrong with being a big kid. I've never lost that youthful element to me. I don't care how old I am. I'm still going to be collecting. I'm going to be scaling down because I bought more than I need. I'll still be buying periodically when I see a deal. But I don't apologize for being who I am. I'm a big kid. I love who I am, and something I should have done a long time ago. But you guys collect what you love. If you can find it, if you can afford it, if you find a great deal, if it just literally falls in your lap, there's nothing wrong with that. And again, you and I are people of faith, so there's probably a reason why these things drop in our lap. So it's to give us maybe a reward. Who knows? But don't apologize for who you are.
Currently, Andy and I, we're going to the conventions, and he's on a Nintendo 64 run, and I'm on a PlayStation 2 run. But I'm always looking for either comics or cards that I can just share with my son. I love the idea of all the times that I still love those. Here's the reality: his collection's my collection, right? You know what I mean? Like, and then by the time it's not my collection, I'm not going to necessarily want it. So I get it. It sits in his room, and I love that. So I am all for that. Say hello to Logan in the chat. He's saying hello to you, Dan, and Spine Tick's brother. That's Hildt, Logan in the Hildt. And that 80s room. Welcome to the show. Guys, this is it, man. We're at the end. Dan, so you're on Spine Ticks Comic Canon. Tell everybody where you're at, where they can find you, and then we'll tell everybody good night.
I'm pretty easy to find. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. The spelling is correct, by the way. It's all small case, and there's spacing in the last name here, and there's an underscore after E and A. That's just how it is in the social media. I'm still in the 20th century. I was dragged kicking and screaming into this 21st century, so I'm still learning how to write my name. But anyway, and on YouTube, I'm all over the place. I'm happy to be on any show because I love talking about comic books because you can tell I have a love and passion for it. I'm on Spine Ticks. It's an honor to be with Sith Lordy. He's a good friend and a great mentor, except he doesn't know about the end of Silver Age. I'm still working on that. Comic Book Canon on Sundays at 5 o'clock. A good group of people. They really are. The Tony Sanders The Hunt every other Friday. That starts kind of late, 8 o'clock Pacific. That's a fun show. You dress as a wrestler or pretend to be a character or whatever. I'm a number of characters on that show. I'm the lawyer who's also the commissioner. I'm the Ancient One of Comics. I dress up in this old wizard outfit, So I have a lot of fun doing that. And I'm on periodically with the Comic Kingpins, and I'll be on at some point. What's the name? BC Comics. BC's on Sundays at 6 o'clock Pacific. So anyway, I'm all over the place, guys. It's not
we thank you for sharing that. That I'm gonna have to check some of those other shows out. I did peruse by Comic Canon. Namely, my son's name's Cannon, so I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I can remember that."
Okay.
And man, I'm gonna have to check the other shows out. Thank you for coming on, especially Last Notice. We love Spine Ticks family. We love all you guys over there. Saturday nights, they are killing it. They've now divided it up from the main Spine Ticks page. So if you want to be, you have to go into the new one, which is building up. And that's a fun little place to be if you love comics, love community. And we found them through Bert, Dan. So that's how we ended up getting connected. We had a guy on here named Pick and Preacher who was actually at this convention, and Pick and Preacher was friends with Bert online. We found them, and then Bert sent us to you guys. It's so weird how the community works, but now we love to have you. You're welcome to come back on again. This is ending our nostalgia. We're going into sports and then food, back to video games, music, and then movies to finish off the roundabout year. Yoda's in the house just in time for us to tell everybody goodbye. But thanks for stopping in, everybody. Andy, it's time to tell everybody good night.
Well, I've got a list of notes here that I've got to start getting into comic books. So with that, I need to go to bed. And so do many of our people here. So, hey, let's say good night like we always do with saying it this way. This is the Rushmore Show, where it's all about your top four.
And I forgot my line. What did you know it? I forgot my line. This is terrible.
And nothing more.
And nothing more. Okay, good.
And nothing more. There we go.
Peace.